Hey everyone, PB here, and welcome back to another one of my videos. Having played video games for over 30 years, I have seen and experienced firsthand the evolution of the JRPG genre, starting with an 8-bit pixelated Final Fantasy to the current exhilarating 4K visually interactive battles and semi-open world environments. A vast majority of these changes are by far great improvements. However, there are some changes that have me on the fence as to whether or not I enjoy them. Let me know in the comments below. What are some of the changes in current games you're not sure about? And while you're down there, don't forget to smash that like button and to subscribe. Without further ado, here are 5 game features that I have a love-hate relationship with. Number 1. Before waypoints became a common feature in current role-playing games, you used to have to explore the basic regions in the world map as well as talk to nearly every NPC in the game in order to figure out where to go. Eventually, new crafts would be introduced at certain points in the game that would unlock new areas for you to explore. For instance, you would get a water vessel like a boat or broken seaplane which would allow you to go to a new continent or island. Later on, an aircraft would become available to fly you over cliffs and mountain ranges in order to reach secluded cities or dungeons. It was a great feature which typically had a natural flow in the evolution of exploration. However, once the 6th generation consoles came into fruition, that all changed. The level designs are now way more intricate and interactive for games to be able to render a full world map at once for an air and sea exploration evolution type game anymore. We are now left with a waypoint marker as a means for games to navigate us to where it wants us to go and who to talk to, rather than using the environment and clues to guide us. When Final Fantasy X came out on the PS2, I was disappointed that I couldn't freely fly around the world map like I could in all the previous Final Fantasy games. I was also disappointed that I wasn't really exploring the maps anymore, but just following an arrow to my next destination. In general, the drawbacks of having a waypoint is that I'm constantly staring at the minimap in the corner of my screen, using my peripherals to make sure I'm not running into any objects or enemies, rather than focusing on the environment around me. Because of this, I'm not a huge fan of the waypoint marker. However, if I'm lost or if I took a break from the game for a while, it's actually kinda nice to have a waypoint marker available so I'm not wandering around aimlessly for hours, getting frustrated with the game and losing interest because I don't know what to do. Number 2. Before venturing out of a city or crawling through a dangerous dungeon, you would always save your game first because you never knew what creatures or bosses awaited you. Spending hours upon hours fighting vicious creatures and treading through a dangerous dungeon, leveling up your characters and gathering some really good loot. The fear that at any moment you might get a game over, causing you to potentially lose all your progress, was a huge stressor back in the day. Most gamers would use at least 3 different save slots, sometimes even the whole memory card, just in case they needed to load a previous save because their current save point is right before a boss and they don't have enough healing spells or items to either defeat the boss or leave the dungeon. Even though it was a gut-wrenching cruelty to lose hours of gameplay, it made gamers better and more conscientious of their decisions before progressing through the story or going on side quests. Nowadays, it seems that they've removed all fears of losing progress from video games. There are autosaves after each loading zone or cutscene. You can retry battles however many times you want, or you respawn back at a campfire or town with practically no penalty. This is why games aren't as hard anymore. It's because they've removed a huge consequence from the game which added a layer of depth and connection to the experience. I really hate this feature. However, on the rare chance that I do end up dying because I wasn't expecting an enemy to be so hard, it's actually pretty nice to not have to redo hours of gameplay and, wasted all that time. Number 3. The combat system for an RPG is one of, if not the biggest contributing factor to its success. Almost every RPG has its own little gimmick to add some spice to the gameplay. For instance, Persona takes the traditional turn-based style combat system and adds a one more feature if you manage to land a critical hit or attack an enemy's weakness. Another example of battle type mechanic is the Tales of series, where you are allowed to move freely amongst the battleground using regular or special attacks at will, guarding hits from the enemy, or opening your command menu to use items or spells. Even though these are completely different styles of combat systems, what makes them enjoyable is the simplicity of initiating the commands so that you can maintain your focus on strategy and tactics. What I've noticed that's been happening with some of the newer RPGs is that they are overcomplicating the battle system by adding in too many button commands. To attack, you press square, dodge roll is O, special attacks is triangle, item is the D-pad and X, guarding is R1, magic is L1 plus one of the 4 geometrical buttons, swapping carries is left or right on the D-pad, locking on a target is R3, swapping enemy targets is holding R2 and directional pad. Look, I'm just trying to casually play a role-playing game. If I wanted something this complicated, I'd play Soul Calibur or Mortal Kombat. Usually what happens in this situation is that I completely forget that there's even a guard option because I'm too busy dodge rolling all the time. The lock on target? Psh, I've never been able to swap targets after locking on, so typically I'll just run around the enemies and wait for the game to highlight the one that I'm wanting to attack. When it comes to binding my magic, I usually bind an attack spell to the attack button square. I'll set my heal to triangle because in normal RPGs, triangle opens a menu to access your healing items, and a support spell to circle because dodge roll is typically a support type action. This way, all that I need to remember is to press the L1 button if I want to use a spell of that primary button's action. So now I basically turn 10 different button options into 3 basic buttons with a primary and secondary command. If I want to get a little crazy, I might even bind something to X, but let's not get ahead of ourselves now. Even though I believe these games are overcomplicating themselves, the battles do seem to flow smoother and are usually more cinematically entertaining to watch and play. Number 4. Most role-playing games only tell about 95% of the story if you just play the main quest line. It's only when you take on the additional side quests that you will fully understand the true story. Normally, you'll be rewarded with equipment that will help you throughout the game, or even unlock special skills for your characters. At least that used to be the case. Now it seems that games are getting way out of control with adding in hundreds of side quests, many of which have nothing to do with the story just so that they can pad in some extra hours of gameplay. So much time is wasted in completing these quests that I've literally forgotten the actual storyline in Final Fantasy 15 while I was playing it. There are roughly 365 quests in that game, which I didn't know at that time, and I would complete all the quests that I could before progressing through the main story. The only time one might complete all the quests now is if there is a major reward for doing so, like in Final Fantasy Crisis Core, which you get the best item in the game after completing all 300 side quests. But you can't complete all the quests until beating all the hidden bosses and have reached the final save point, which kind of renders the reward useless at this point unless you are planning to play the game again on New Game Plus. It's gotten to the point that there are memes with video game characters all decked out in epic gear before they even fight the first boss. I do enjoy having side quests in games, but come on, let's make them pertinent again and add a limit amount to like 1 per character and maybe just a couple per village. Number 5. Whenever there are glitches or exploits in a game, for some odd reason I really enjoy taking advantage of them. I feel like I'm part of a secret club in an underground ring performing a heist. Some of these glitches allow you to go out of bounds and basically skip large sections of games, as well as duplicating items to get unlimited money or even boosting your stats. Some of these glitches people find are incredibly difficult to do, so being able to pull them off is like an achievement in itself. That is, until the developers get a hold of this information and decide to put an end to it. When systems weren't connected to the internet all the time, what you paid for is what you got. In our current gaming generation, game developers can now create updates and patches to block players from abusing these unattended designs. That's not all they can do though. They have the ability to nerf items in games, change the enemy stats, and even remove levels completely from the game. It seems a little unfair that developers are able to make changes to a game after you purchased it, but apparently you aren't really purchasing the game, you're purchasing their services, which allows you to play their game. Even though I don't agree with this because I really enjoy game-breaking glitches, whenever there are issues with the game, like Star Ocean The Divine Force, where you weren't able to scan and move at the same time, making it really difficult to find all 242 chests in the game, it was very appreciable that the developers could make those changes, as well as some others that made the game more enjoyable and better for the players. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to click that like button so it helps my videos with the YouTube algorithms. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you can get notified when I post new videos. Also, before you check out one of these other videos on my channel, let me know what sort of content you would like to see next. Until then, see you next time, my friends.